Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the LitRPG podcast. I'm Ramon Mejia. I'm here to bring you the latest LitRPG news, reviews, and of course author interviews. This week I have 4 new LitRPG reviews for you in episode 179 of the show. And everything this week is slice of life. A bunch of slice of life stories happen to come out that way, but they're all still pretty good. And that's going to include Hunter's Dream Online, Book 1, Ascension. Also reviewing this week Player Reach the Top, LitRPG Series Book Number 1. Also, Village of Noobtown, a LitRPG Adventure, Mayor of Noobtown Book Number 2. So the first book in that series is The Mayor of Noobtown, if you remember that one. And last but not least, Into Hells, Axe Druid Book Number 3. So those are 4 new LitRPG reviews. Before we get into that, we of course go into LitRPG news. And in LitRPG news, we don't have a lot of LitRPG news this week. Just a couple bits of commissioned artwork from Tao Wong that he dropped on his Facebook page of his character Makito from the System Apocalypse series in some hours. Some of it is traditional looking. The other one is more futuristic, system-y kind of looking. I actually like the second one better, or I should say the one that's futuristic looking. If you're watching the video version of the podcast, we're showing you not live, obviously. But you can also check it out if you go to his Facebook page at facebook.com/pg/Tao Wong authored. You'll go see it there as well. So he has actually quite a few nice little bits of custom-made artwork for his series. So good stuff there. That's it for LitRPG news. Now, short. On to stuff that is out now. I haven't had a chance to read. It includes the 4th book in the Everybody Love Lars Chest novel series called Morgana. So volume 4 of that series is out, very popular. I stopped reading it a little while ago, had an issue with it. You can look at older reviews if you want to, but a lot of people still love the story, so we make sure we tell you about when new ones come out. Also out this week is Gloominess +1, Gleam of Darkness, and 8-Bit Bastards, 2nd level, written by Joshua Mason. Enjoyed the first book immensely. Happy to see that book 2 is coming out, even though it's a little bit later than what the author told me he was going to put it out, but things happen. Also out is Extension, Game World Book 1, out on Amazon. In new LitRPG audiobooks, we actually have quite a few more LitRPG audiobooks this week, including The Phoenix of Alateria, Digital Sorcerer Book Number 2 in that series. That one is more of a humor-based. It's semi-reminiscent of Critical Failures, that kind of humor, if you like the series. Also out is Monster Hunt NYC. Don't get it confused. The other one, that's an entirely different series, written by Harmon Cooper. And also, this is narrated by Sambu Theater, including some original song work. Lyrics by Harmon Cooper, music stuff from Sambu Theater. Actually, this has taken such a long time. I think it's taken almost over a year for this thing to be finished as a product and to come out. So there is original music here. You actually got to see some of the original music that was in this novel at the Here Now Festival, which we went to, along with Sambu Theater. They did a couple performances of the songs from this story, and they were really nice. And I'm hoping that they're going to add a nice extra bit of flavor and entertainment to this particular series, because there aren't a lot of audiobooks that actually have music in them, and there's a very technical reason for that. They had a lot of space, and so Amazon and Audible were generally not on board with that, but because they're part of the story and it just took a long while to get through, here it is. So this is one of the very few novels that has actual full-on music stuff in here somewhere, so yay. Also out as an audiobook is Sanctuary Underworld Book Number 3. Totally love this one. This was super fun. Apocalypse Gates Book Number 4, Elven Accord, is out as an audiobook as well. And the 2nd book in the Realm Between series is out as well. And the first book in the Save Point Upload sci-fi LitRPG series by Matthew Sieg is out as an audiobook, also narrated by Sambu Theater. I actually really like this story. As an ebook, I enjoyed books 1 and 2. I think it's an underrated series in that not everybody has seen it and read it, but everybody should. It's actually a very original-ish storyline. I don't know whatever. You can just go listen to it. We have a review on the website if you want to go check it out to get a few more details. But it's sci-fi-ish instead of fantasy, which is always really good. And they're aliens, if you can't tell by the cover. Also out as an audiobook is Relic Legacy, Earth Force, Book Number 1 by Shimer Kuznets. Shimer Kuznets. There you go. I always say his name slightly incorrectly. But that is out as an audiobook as well. This one's a little lighter in game mechanics, but still entertaining. Okay, on to upcoming LitRPG. This is where I just read a bunch of stuff that's coming out in the near future, including the third book in the Omniscience series called Skyflare, out on July the 12th. This is podcasting record on the 11th, so we're just about a day off. Also out on July the 15th, it'll be Beast Queen, which is going to be the Monster Slayer Online book number 2, the sequel to The Goblin King. On July the 16th, the third book in the Arcane Kingdom Online series called The Fallen City. On July the 18th, The Time Master Interworld Network book number 1. This is a Russian translation. And July the 19th, Controlling the Goddess Chronicles Kira Freya book number 2. On July 23rd, Cannibal Demon of the Mind Post-Apocalypse Survival LitRPG series, also if I'm not mistaken, from Russia. Actually, getting a lot of Russian translations, like independently translated Russian translations, which means that the quality does vary, unfortunately. So actually we're going to see more and more of these, as I think more independent Russian authors are seeing, there's money in America for stuff that they already kind of know is semi-successful in Russia, potentially. But again, because they're not using the companies that are willing to do the really kind of money-heavy translation work and editing, sometimes the quality varies. I'm not this thing particular. This one, I'm just saying in general. I've noticed that's been more recently. Quest for Vengeance, a LitRPG saga, will be out on July the 24th. July the 26th will be the Completionist Chronicles book number 4 called Raise. Super looking forward to that one. On July the 30th, Skyrim's Online. On July 31st, Imprisoned Online, gaming the system. On August the 1st, Shades the First Rule, Divine Apostasy book number 1. On August 5th, Hero Go, which is Champions is Playing book number 3. That's another Russian translation. August the 8th, Invasion book number 1, A Second Chance, which is the new series from Vasily Mahenko. It's still set in Barliona, which is the same story universe as Ways of Shaman, but it's a new main character, new storyline. But it is set after the main events of that Way of the Shaman series. August the 10th is Eden's Gate, The Ascent, which is the 6th book in that series. August the 12th, Dungeons of the Crooked Mountains, Underdog book number 1. On August the 15th, Scamps and Scoundrels, The Bad Guys book number 1. August the 22nd, Dragonheart Iron Will, which is the 2nd book in that series. August 29th this is new to the list, Shadow Sun Expansion, which is the 2nd book in the Shadow Sun series, which is a RPG apocalypse story written by Dave Wilmarth, which is highly rated and enjoyed by a lot of readers. On August the 30th, A Check for a Billing, Galacticon book number 3. August 31st, Zones of Alakria. Sometime in August, apparently, First Song book number 2, written by Blaze Corvin and Outspan Foster, is going to be out. I'm actually looking forward to that. It was a nice, twisty apocalypse RPG story as well. September 2nd, The Game of Villains, World of Karnak book number 1. September 6th, Cities, Cliffs of Eldamar. September 9th, Blood of Fate, World 99 book number 1. And there we go. That's all we're going out in the near future. So there we go. On to new releases and reviews. Okay, this week we're starting off with Hunter's Dream Online, book number 1, Ascension, written by J.R. Davis. It is 247 pages, $4.99. It is available on Kindle Unlimited, and here's the author's description. With his chance to join the world's first VR MMORPG, Robin takes the class of necromancer in a world of constant conflict. Facing off against gods, monsters, and other players, will he be able to stay the tide of destruction and save the village he swore to protect? Or will Ignis and his guild prevail and lay waste to the land? Join Robin, his undead companion Charon, and his friends as they take on the world and other players, dungeons, PvP tournaments, large-scale battles, and a dear leasing agent named Chester. This is Hunter's Dream. So there we go. Not a bad description. Kind of describes the first 25-ish% of the story. This is a good slice of life story about a guy that is playing a fantasy VR MMO as a necromancer. He creates his character, grinds XP, figures out his powers, and groups up for some quests. there are novel goals in that they're like quest goals and hints about something for like a series goal towards the end, but it's still very much a slice of life action adventure story. There are fairly regular technical writing issues, unfortunately, mostly punctuation stuff like missing quotation marks, periods, commas in the wrong places, missing dialogue tags, a lot of small things like that. And I say a lot because it's essentially on every bit of dialogue, and sometimes just about every paragraph. The author says that he sent a message to the podcast recently saying he's fixed many of these issues, but I checked today before recording and they were still there. So it might be that Amazon hasn't pushed out the latest update of this novel to everybody who's already purchased it, and maybe only the new people are going to see these fixes. But I can only judge a story by what I have in front of me, unfortunately. So they're still there, so that's why I'm mentioning it now. And it's not going to bother everybody. It didn't really bother me too much, but I know sometimes these technical little things are going to like bug people who read it. So just if that does, don't read this. Combat is pretty good, but occasionally it's a little disorganized and hard to follow. There are a couple instances of game mechanics not being followed exactly as described, but it's nothing story-breaking. Overall, you're going to get a lot of MMO progress. I actually liked the necromancer stuff and the direction it went to, even though if it gets a little OP towards the end, it was still a very entertaining class progression stuff and some good and a pretty solid RPG mechanics in there. Overall, this is kind of a middle of the road slice of life LitRPG. Nothing bad about it. Nothing super outstanding. Good combat, good action adventure, but a very slice of life in that there's nothing like super like nothing. You're not saving the world. You're not on this amazing quest to like defeat the AI or anything. It's just, the main character gets some quest lines and he follows through there, and there's like these quest goal lines. But at the end of the day, it's just like, this is just fun action adventure. I think it's really nice for anybody who wants a story that they can pick up and put down without feeling like they have to like continue on with the story. It's nice leisurely kind of story, which is perfectly entertaining for me, but not everybody likes that style of story. So for me, it gets score 7.2 out of 10, which is good. Again, solid kind of middle of the roadish kind of review score. Hunter's Dream Online, book number 1 Ascension, with a score of 7.2 out of 10. And next we have Player Reach the Top, LitRPG series, book number 1, written by Rick Scars. This is 509 pages, $2.99. That is available on Kindle Unlimited. And here's the author's description. 2044. The world of games changed long ago. Ascension has become one of the most popular VR MMO games. It is a huge world divided into hundreds of floors, with each floor a boundless location with its own countries, tribes, and millions of players. The object of the game is to unlock all the gates and conquer the top. Having joined the game, William Thomas doesn't realize that he is all by himself, and then he accepts the first quest. Cursed Rat, level 46. And that's actually the novel description. The rest of the novel description is like, this is a book that has over 1,000 planned chapters and already has 300 in Russian, spanning over 6 books. And there's a bunch of stuff that doesn't have anything to do with the actual novel itself. But it is supposed to be a Russian translation of a story that's supposed to be popular in Russian. I can neither confirm or deny that. I can only tell you what the novel description says. But because it is a translation, you should expect some translation and technical writing issues in the story. There aren't a lot, but there were the ones that were there were noticeable. I was like, that doesn't sound quite right, and it's probably a translation thing. So if that bothers you, sorry. But for me, it's just like, okay, just a thing to note. And this happens a lot in Russian translations or any kind of translation work where it's some phrases and some colloquialisms just don't translate perfectly, and it is what it is. The story itself is a multi-narrative story that switches between the main character and the higher level stuff he's going through and other players. The main character is a new MMO player that starts in a high level area by accident instead of a starter town. He has to figure out a way to level, get skills, and money when even the rats are 40 times his level. The other POVs are particular clan leaders looking to find out who the main character is, or just random players used to tell a story or develop a quest line background. So you're actually going to get the majority of the story stays with the main character, it does. But there are these breaks where you're seeing, again, some guild leader's point of view who's kind of sort of jealous of the main character and his like rapid ascension levels because of his situation, or like just background for these player guild leaders, or just like again randomish people going on quest lines. But it's supposed to be like this little short story about, oh, this is like background information on like big story things that are planned for the series. But there are breaks in others. These are other points of view that are also in the story, and sometimes they happen together, sometimes they don't, or at least not in this particular volume of the series. I personally enjoyed a couple aspects of the story. I like the thoroughness of the story, at least in the beginning portion of it. I like that there weren't any like illogical cheats or OP abilities in the beginning story. When I first looked at this cover and I read the description, I really wasn't sure to make of it, and I'm glad that I gave it a chance because it turned out to be pretty entertaining. Again, the main character has to start out in a higher level zone, even though he's level 1, and even the rats are like level 40, and everything goes from 40 to like 80 or something. And part of his, at least the beginning of the story, is like him overcoming that barrier of like figuring out some way to gain levels. And even though he's at a huge disadvantage, he uses his intelligence and he uses his wits to kind of overcome that. For example, even though he can't afford any of the high level gear sold by the shop owners and on the particular level, he figures out how to find a friend who spawned on a regular lower level and grind social quests to get money, and then he sends that money to his friend so he can get like level appropriate gear for level 1s and 2s, and that helps him like start to like grind, and he has to do social quests to get experience points, to get a few levels on his belt and stuff like that. I thought was very good. It was, instead of like just cheating and giving the main character some weird overpowered skill where he can suddenly beat level 40 or 50 characters when he's level 1 magically without any kind of real thought process put into it. That's not here, and I like that fact about it, even though he does, again, obviously at some point beat level 40 characters level 1. He does it in such a way that you don't feel like he's cheating. You feel like he's being intelligent about it, and I like that aspect, at least at the beginning part of the story. Things kind of shift a little bit as the story continues on, because eventually the main character kind of his level starts to match the zone he's in, and so he actively starts being in combat, and he gets a few semi-OP powers towards the middle end of the story, but still it was entertaining. I like that portion of it. The actual game mechanics are fairly standard. They're picked up from MMO, so if you like that kind of stuff, there are lots of item and skill descriptions. Their main character levels up, gets classes, he gets by skills and abilities and equipment. Mid to late story, the actual leveling up process becomes less important, and it's mostly there to show the difference between his progression. I mean, he still levels, and as the story goes on towards the end, it becomes harder for him to level, which makes total sense. But the levels themselves become, again, just less important, because the real game progression comes from him getting unique skills, unique equipment that change the way he fights and adventures, and I think that's just a story shift. The story itself, the end of the story isn't really an end, and I think that might bug some people. It's more of a pause. And again, I mentioned this in the beginning of the review. The novel description mentioned that this is only part of a much longer serial story, and the ending reflects that. It's kind of a pause in a very convenient place, but you can tell that there's no real ending to this. Is more like, volume 1 of this really long series. And so just be aware that if that bugs you, that there's no real ending and there's no real plot, it is just like slice of life stuff, then don't read this. But if you're okay with that kind of thing, then you're going to, I've actually found it very entertaining, a lot more entertaining than I thought it was going to. Overall, I thought it was good, but again, don't expect a traditional novel structure, and don't mind a few translation issues, and I think you'll have a nice time with this. I'm giving it a score of 7.6 out of 10. That's Player Reach the Top, LitRPG series book number 1, with the score of 7.6 out of 10. And next we have Village of Noobtown, a LitRPG adventure, Mayor of Noobtown, book number 2, written by Ryan Rimmel. It is 551 pages, $2.99. It is available on Kindle Unlimited. And here's the author's description. Well, it could be better. Jim and his literal shoulder demon have survived so far by the skin of their teeth. After finding a long-abandoned strata village, Jim has begun the process of rebuilding his town. Unfortunately, our favorite adventurer, the threats he now faces are far more complicated than mere monsters. The poor noob has to deal with angry townsfolk, trade negotiations, and a talking badger. With goblins and bandits also sniffing around, will Windfall survive? There we go. That's actually a slightly inside joke. Okay. overall, it's a good sequel. I really did enjoy it. This one actually gets the highest review score of the week for me, 7.7 out of 10. The beginning of the story is a little tedious because there's a recap, and it's decent enough. And for people who haven't read the first book in a while or just want to skip right to book 2, I think it does it does what it's supposed to do. But because that and the beginning portion of the story kind of describes kind of a tedious situation for the main character in that it reflects the reality of trying to run a town and address the daily needs of a large group. It's not super fun to read. It's not bad to read, but like the first 6% is just something you kind of might have to push through. I kind of found myself less than entertained for that first 6%, even though I was like, it's set to remind you of like who it is, what the situation is. But after that 6% mark, when the main character starts to go back to adventuring and doing smaller solo stuff, questing and adventuring, the novel comes back to being super entertaining. The big highlight of the story is, of course, the humor in this novel. I think that was always a big quality for book 1 and book 2 here, is that the main character is funny and he has someone to banter with. And in this case, that continues on. And adding another character, the Badger, actually adds even more humor and more opportunities to banter and joke around. And I think that's going to be part of the biggest enjoyment factor for a lot of different people. There's a lot of good town building mechanics in this one as well. Book 1 had a minor amount. Book 2 has a lot. So if you like town building mechanics, if you like town building stuff, this is going to be right up your alley. There's good RPG progression. Remember, the main character has this, and this is minor spoiler if you haven't read book 1, but he has a special multi-class ability that doesn't penalize himself, so he can actually have multiple classes. And there's also some good class progression here, and he's kind of branching into the mage stuff, which I actually liked. And it felt very logical without being overpowered, so I like the aspect of it. And it's something I think is probably developed as the series goes on in book 3. The end of the story, however, felt a little bit rushed. There are a couple story threads that were resolved in a couple pages when it took like chapters for them to be set up, and I was slightly disappointed that was the case. Where like I felt like at the end of the story, the main character is like, "Oh, this is the big stuff is done. Oh, but you know what? I forgot about this and this, and let me tie those up real quick, and tie them up with the end of the story." And it didn't ruin the story anything, but I definitely noticed, oh, those were very quickly resolved. When I felt like they're probably, to me, could have spent a little more time just dealing with those. But I understand how writing is sometimes at the end of the novel, you're just like, oh, I want this to be done. And that's what this felt like a tiny bit. So, but it's so I had a good time with it. It gets a score of 7.7 out of 10 for me, which is the highest score for the podcast this week. That's Village of Noobtown, a LitRPG adventure, Mayor of Noobtown, book number 2, with a score of 7.7 out of 10. Okay, next we have Into the Hells, Axe Druid, book number 3, written by Christopher Johns. It is 419 pages, $5.99. It is available on Kindle Unlimited, and here's the author's description. Hunting for allies, a rescue mission that goes against the natural order. Time to delve deep. Zeke and his friends have a final few obstacles standing in their way before they can try and find a way into the Hells. Everything to this point has been an effort to rescue their buddy Balmer. One obstacle happens to be a mythical beast that might sooner eat them than help them. But no big deal, right? Beyond that, all the group needs to do is find the hidden city of the High Elves and convince them to join their cause. Searching and survival. If only it were that easy. Now there is an active opposition to their goals and of saving not only this world from wars of influence, but Earth as well. Will a hungry beast be picking his teeth with their bones? Even if they survive long enough to search for Balmer, the best case scenario is having the team dive into the Hells. So there we go. Full disclosure, I received advanced copy for review, but purchased a copy when it became available. This is actually a very easy review. This is the third book in the series. Book 1 I had issues with. Book 2 was better. Like, it solved some of the issues I had, and I enjoyed it a lot more. Book 3 continues on in being entertaining and not having, in continuing to kind of improve the storytelling and making sense, connecting these adventures. The story is very slice of life. And that the main character in this group kind of just go on these adventures. And eventually there are kind of these like smaller quest goals that are supposed to be tied together, with some ultimate purpose of saving this world from malevolent forces and by extension Earth. However, those larger series goals don't always make sense, or like they don't always like tie into it directly. I've had criticism before, like, oh, remember there are storylines in book 1 that just weren't addressed at all in book 2. Well, finally in book 3 they're addressed, and I like that aspect of it, even if they were given like probably less time than I thought they would have, considering how important they were made out to be. They were still absolutely addressed, and I like the fact that there was some actual progression in some of these series goals and some of the quest lines from book 1 and book 2. The story on the whole is light on RPG mechanics, but sometimes I should say light on RPG progression occasionally, but it's still an intriguing story. There's good crafting, and there's more of a solo story in the first quarter, which was actually really enjoyable for me. I like smaller stories personally, and it was a nice counterbalance to like some of the larger scale battles and group stuff in like the mid and late portions of the novel. And again, just be aware that the novel is slice of life, and so there's sometimes some randomish adventures the main characters go on as a quest. But again, it makes some solid progress on several storylines established in book 1 and 2, which I was happy to see. So the novel gets an improved score of 7.3 to 10. Into the Hells, Axe Druid book number 3, with a score of 7.3 to 10. The novel continues to series get better and better, so the scores are, of course, matching that particular that pathway. They're getting higher. So it's 7.3 to 10 for Into the Hells, Axe Druid, book number 3. And that's it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for hanging out today with me on the LitRPG podcast. Remember, you can follow us on Facebook, on Twitter, YouTube, Patreon, our webpage, litrpgpodcast.com. And we have a bunch of the pages on our links here for places you can hang out with authors, LitRPG authors and readers, and have fun. If you enjoy the podcast in any way, shape, or form, and you want to help support us, and help keep the podcast free and free of ads, you can find out all the ways to support us at litrpgpodcast.com/support. But until we can hang out again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for, again, spending your time with me and for making, listening to me talk about LitRPG, a genre of novels that I love, and, just enjoy. And until we can hang out again, remember to read some LitRPG.